Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Well, we did get our snow last night. We got a light dusting over everything. It's beginning to melt now. I'm going to check the surface of the soil and just see if it's frozen or not. Well, it's kind of frozen on top, but not all the way through the soil. It could be repotted today, but I don't know. Maybe later today if it warms up. You can see my maple group here is got a lot of snow on it. Buds are still looking good. We've got some cold weather coming up, so I may have to put some of my more tender trees like this Osage orange forest back into the greenhouse for the one night, because we're getting down to -6 degrees Celsius, which is pretty cool. And I can always put the little heater on in the greenhouse here, and that'll keep them warm for that night. And after that, it looks like it's going to warm up again. April's one of those months that it's quite typical to get snow in April. You get a week of good weather, then a week of snow, and it's one of those transitional months. Then it's not till May that it really starts warming up and gets above freezing. So yeah, the last frost date here is usually around going towards the third week in May. Is usually the last time we get frost. But we've had it frost in June even still, so you really have to watch the weather. My soil bin's in the greenhouse here, and it's not frozen, so it stayed pretty warm in the greenhouse here overnight. I think what I'll do is I'll bring the cedar clump into the greenhouse here. I can turn the heat on in the greenhouse, and it should be fairly pleasant in here, and I can repot it on the bench here, and I'll keep it in the greenhouse until it begins to recover. I've got my workbench cleared off here, so I'll bring in the trees now. All right, there's the cedar clump brought in. Yeah, it's quite frozen, the surface of the soil. So hopefully in the greenhouse here it'll thaw, and I can get it repotted today. I still have a few more cedars to separate from this elm here. There's 3 of them in here. The trees are warming up, so I'll come back in maybe an hour and see how they're doing. Maybe the soil will be thawed by then, and I can start the repotting. It looks like the sun is coming out today, so that'll help warm things up. I'm back outside. It's definitely warmer here in the greenhouse. It actually feels quite comfortable. So I'm going to... Everything's thawed out. Yeah? Still cold on the surface of the soil, but it's thawed. It's above freezing now. So I've got 3 remaining trees to get out of this pot. So I'll do that next. This pot has an elm tree growing in it, and this elm tree was just growing in the backyard, and I saw this little seedling and put it in a pot. So I'm going to get it out of this pot. Looks good. It's not too root bound. Just right, I think. A few weeds here I can pull out. And it's still a little frozen, this root ball. I placed the little heater here beside the frozen pot, and that'll help warm it up a little quicker. There's not much heat comes out of here. It's just like a gentle breeze. Maybe I'll put it a little further away. About there. Yeah, that should heat it up nicely. I did some weeding to my bonsais outside while I was waiting for this to thaw out, so let's give it a try now. Oh, much better. Well, I managed to get the smaller one out. Fairly good root system on it, so that can go in the water. Just getting some of the finer roots out. There's this one tap root, so I'm gonna have to pull it. There it goes. Okay, that one's out too. And that's got a fairly good root system too. Might have to remove that one root that sticks up really high here, but all right, so that is all my trees ready for planting. All right, I'm going to get the tree out of the pot now. So I'll just lift it up. It comes out pretty easily. Let's have a look at the roots. Wow, there's quite a mat on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. Just a thick mat on the bottom. So that's probably what's been pushing it up out of the pot. So I will begin raking the root system out now. So here I go. I'm going to lose all this nice moss, but I don't know, I guess I can save it. I'll save as much as I can. Okay, so I'll begin raking now, starting from the base of the tree, raking outwards in a radial pattern. I think this is the third repotting of this tree, I believe. I'd have to go back and check the playlist. I have a playlist for this tree, so you can see it right from, you know, a collected tree in a training pot to its present state. And I was looking back at the old video, and I mean, the basic structure hasn't changed a whole lot on the tree, but it's certainly getting more refined, both the root system and the top of the tree. And this was collected on one of our club collection trips, and the trees have to be collected because they cut them down for the pathways in the forest. And they cut them down, and then all these little seedlings grow in the light, and they end up, you know, they let them grow for a bit and then they cut them all down again. So these are trees that are collected from areas that they would get removed anyway. So I don't feel guilty about collecting them. And they're not all that old, these trees. These trees would probably be, this one is probably maybe 10 years old. They grow quite quickly in the forest there. Maybe a little older, maybe 15 years old. But it's not that old. They get this flaky bark on them quite quickly. In one of my videos, I removed all the flaky bark, took it right back to smooth bark, and it just grows in the next year again, the flaky bark. And you can see, because this tree was outside, there's no white root tips, so the roots aren't active on this tree yet. So that's good. It's a good time to repot it when it's inactive like this. It is warming up enough that I think I can go outside and do this. No point filming indoors in here. Well, here we are outside. Don't mind the bit of snow there. Let's just pretend it's nice and warm outside and keep working on the tree. So you can see I'm cleaning out a lot of roots, but I'm keeping the ones I want, the radial roots. So cleaning out all these fine roots does a couple of things. It allows the water to get into the root base more, so it's not, you know, a mass of roots. And the other thing, it cleans out the old roots, and then it has space for the new roots to grow in, all the new fine roots. So it's kind of like, you know, reducing your root base, but keeping all the roots you want, and then creating space for the new roots to grow in. You can also see how far the roots have spread from the tree, right to the edge of the pot here. So I need to reduce this back to plant all the new trees around it. For this tree to have a really powerful base to it, I will need to get these roots all sorted out, nice and radial, to get that nice buttress trunk that the cedars are famous for. So not only do we have to pretend it's warm out here, but pretend my hands are keeping nice and warm too. I keep washing them in the ice water over there, which has a layer of ice on top, so it's it's quite cool to wash your hands in ice water. However, I think they'll warm up. There's a phenomena that your hands, when they're in ice water, I don't know, the body reacts by pumping lots of blood to your hands, and that works really well, because I've done it many times. And your hands suddenly get really warm, and they stay warm even though you're got them dipped in ice water. So you can see all the radial roots that I'm keeping, and any crossing roots in that get ripped out by the root rake. So it just leaves the nice radial roots intact. And that's what I want. You can see this section, I can run the comb right through the roots without any more tearing. So that's how I want the whole root base. So it just combs out like hair, I guess. You might ask, like, doesn't the tree need all these roots? Why am I removing so many roots, and how can the tree survive? Well, I reduced the top of the tree quite severely when I pruned it. So I'm kind of reducing the root base with the top of the tree in equal proportions. So taking a lot off the top and a lot off the bottom. If I hadn't taken a lot off the top, then you'd have to be more careful about removing so many roots on the bottom, because it may not be able to support the canopy of the tree, and you might get a lot of dieback up top. So you kind of gotta keep your roots in proportion to the top of the tree. That's why quite often repotting and pruning is done at the same time, because you're reducing the top and the bottom of the tree in proportion. Okay, I think I can flip the tree over now and start working on the bottom. I'll just wash my hands in the ice water again. All right, let's start on the bottom. There's some drainage screes in there. They're kind of falling apart. And I'll comb out these roots. Again, starting in the middle and combing outwards in a radial pattern. Definitely down to the wood here now. Okay, I'm going to give the root base a wash now. All right, here it goes in the water. And it's all one tree. It's they're not, you know, separate trees fused together, which is interesting to have kind of a natural clump style. Okay, I think that's good. I think we've got them washed enough that we can see what's going on and sort them out and prune the roots. So let's head back to the bench now. All right, here's a look at the root base. My first task, I'm going to get rid of these dead roots that are up here and just keep, you know, the live roots down lower. I'm going to come in with my branch cutters and come in kind of about here. Like that. And that's much better. And I'll take this off here. I'm going to remove this one too. Like that. Now there's not much of this in this area for roots, which is too bad. However, I will try and encourage something to grow. And I'm wondering if this one should be removed. It's kind of high up, and the problem with it is it's not that radial. It should be coming out this direction, and it's kind of over here. So I'm going to take that off. There's lots of fine roots below. Like that. Dead one there too. Yeah, this part of the root system's really nice. Now there's a root from this trunk that kind of crosses over that nice root there. I'm going to take that off because I really like this root that flows down from the trunk into the ground there. So this one's going to come off like that. And that shows that root flare much nicer. And there's one here too. It looks like it's a dead root that needs to be removed so you can see the trunk flare better there. So I'm going to see if I can remove it with the little scissors here. I'm not sure, but there it goes. And I'll pull it apart here. Try pulling it from this side. There we go. Okay, there it goes. Got 90% of it out. So that's better too. Looking at the back here. I'm wondering if these roots are too high. They are kind of out of the root base. I think I'm going to take those off. Like that, and this one also. It's a nice root, but it's just too high. There'd be better roots down here below. A few crossing roots in here I gotta get rid of. I may have to rewash this area. I think I will, just to see what's going on here. So I'll do that and come back. All right, I've got that section re-washed, and you can see a bit more of the roots. So now I'm wondering about this one. I thought this one came down here, but now I see it doesn't. It's just a root comes off and it was cut off. So I'm going to reduce that one back to there. That's better. This is all looking okay in this area. It's nice and radial and flowing. You know, I see our soil level, I don't know, I was hoping down lower, but it's kind of awkward looking in this section. Might just have to wait for that to thicken up and maybe something grow in this area. All right, I think it is ready for planting. I don't think I can do a whole lot more. I can prune these roots back a little. Let's do that. So I'll just take the, really long roots off, just trim them back a bit. Keep the root base a bit more compact. I think that's about it. That's it for the root pruning. Yeah, I really like this side of the tree. This side is very strange, but that's the way it is. I'll get the pot and the seedlings and start planting the tree now. I got this pot from Hong from our club, and he drilled a whole bunch of holes in it. It's a mica pot, so he could tie down his forest trees. So I think I'm going to put a big screen across the entire bottom of the pot, and that'll make sure my soil doesn't fall out of any of these smaller holes. Okay. Spread it around so it's nice and flat. Looks like I need a little more. Now I'm going to place the tree in the pot. So make sure all my roots on the bottom are kind of radial. And I want it to rotate the front slightly. Maybe to here. A little more. Maybe there. Yep. And I want it a little further back, I think. Give some room up front here. Now, how's that looking? I think that's looking pretty good for the front of the tree, but it is on a bit of a slant, so I've got to pile up some soil on this side of the tree to straighten it out. All right, let's get a bit of soil in here. And I'll straighten the tree out. Making sure I've still got my front here. Yeah, that's not bad. That's looking pretty good there. I'll show you the front view. Here's a look at the front view. So I've got the tree vertical, and I'm just wondering about the position in the pot. Is it too far over to the left, I'm wondering? I think it is. I think I've got to move it to the right a bit. It's too far off balance. Does that look better? That looks more balanced. I'm wondering, could I go further? It's hard to say because, I'll have seedlings planted, which could change the whole composition. This is just the single clump, which looks pretty good. I think that would be a good position for just the single clump. It looks fairly nicely balanced. I'll try moving it over a bit, but now, does that look better or? Yeah, it's not bad there. It looks more balanced in the pot. More peaceful and serene, I would say. I think I'll get some soil in around those roots first, kind of work it in, because I don't think I'll be changing the position of the tree. I think it's nice and vertical. I'm happy with the front, and I like the position in the pot. I checked the position from the side to make sure it's vertical in that view too, and it is. So yeah, I'll put a little soil in the pot now. And add a bit of soil. All right, I'm going to find my largest ones first. That's these two. There was that one root I was going to prune off the top of it. It's kind of sticking out of the root base here, or out of the soil. I'm going to prune off this taproot down here, and the rest can stay. Now I will cut this back. It's too much foliage. I'm pruning back to some nice healthy foliage on it. Yeah, somewhere about there. Actually, yeah, that's good. Now, so from the front here, I would think I'd want my two largest seedlings up front here to create forced perspective. So one each side of the main tree, I think. So this one's kind of got a bent trunk. It's fanning away, so that would match the trees in the back. So I can plant that one here, kind of up front, right about here, I think. And I'll try and get my roots combed out a bit, if I can find my root rake. It's here somewhere. Oh, there it is, right over here. Okay, so I'm going to try and get the roots sorted out a bit, like that, and then plant it out front here. And I'm not sure if I'll like this planting or not. It's just an idea. If it doesn't look good, well, it was worth a try. So that one's planted. It kind of fans out. It looks good. So let's get the next largest one pruned up. I'm just going to take the taproot off the bottom here, like that. The rest can stay, and then I'll prune it back. To about there. Maybe just take the tip off this leaf, like that. Now this one's a pretty straight trunk, so this might be the case where I have the tree in front of the other trees, so you kind of have to look in and see what's going on. Or do I want it off to the side? I don't think so. I think I need something here. So yeah, I think right about here for this tree. So I'll fill this in. All right, I'll let you have a look at what this looks like so far. There's what it looks like with the two little seedlings out front. So kind of this one's blocking your view of this trunk here, and this one's kind of fanning out to the side. Yeah, might look okay. I'll continue with the planting. I'm going to get all my seedlings out, and just so I can see which are the larger ones, which are the smaller ones, and I can arrange them in order, having the larger ones at the front to give that forced perspective in the planting. Right, like that. Definitely. I'm stepping back now, having a look at the planting. I like it. It looks like a grove of cedars. It really gives me that impression that I'm in a cedar grove. I like all the difference in height of the trees, the small ones and the big tree, and makes the big tree look really, tall and mature. So I think I'm going to finish filling in the soil. I've got a few low spots, and then I'll apply moss to the planting. I filled in the soil in the low spots. I'm going to give it a watering now just to settle all the soil in around the roots, and then I'll apply the moss. I've got my moss all laid out here. I've got some really kind of thick, coarse shade moss, and then I've got some finer, more velvety moss. So my plan is to put the thicker, coarser moss in the front and the finer stuff at the back, and that again will give me a forced perspective. Coarser stuff up front and finer at the back, and it'll give the whole planting a little more depth, I hope. So I'm going to start applying the moss, and how I do it, I just wet each clump of moss, press it down firmly so it contacts the soil, and I put it in little pieces, arrange it sort of like a jigsaw puzzle so they all fit together. It's a tricky and long process, so I'll show you just a few ones at the start, and then we'll come back and see the final planting when it's all mossed up. So I'll take my first clump of moss here. I'll just rip off a tiny piece, dip it in my bucket of water to soak it like that, and then I'm going to put this coarse stuff up front here. And then you just have to push it down so it's firmly contacting the soil beneath. And you need bonsai soil to have the moss grow, so you can water it frequently without drowning the tree. So that's why moss does really well on top of bonsai soil, because it gets watered frequently and fertilized frequently. So there's my first piece planted, and then I've got this really fine moss here, and that will go, I think that's going to go in beside the tree here. I finished applying the moss, so let's go in and have a look. I used some sand also, just to kind of break it up a bit so it's not just all moss. So I'm quite happy with it. It really gives me the impression of being in a cedar grove. I really like it. So I'm looking at the planting now, and I'm trying to picture what scale a person would be in here, and I would imagine a person would be about that high. Yeah, I think it's quite successful. I like, having to look through the little trees to see the big tree behind. It's kind of like a view you would get in a forest when you're walking along a trail or something. The big trees, they're not right there by the edge of the trail. You've kind of got to look at them through a few smaller trees. That's the impression it gives me anyway. I really enjoyed taking this project from something in my imagination to reality, and I think I achieved my goal. I think it gives you the impression of a cedar grove. It reminds me of those cedar forests up north. And that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.